Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We are looking forward to sharing some Confluence content automation strategies with you today, and we hope that this provides you some useful tips and tricks as well. As these things go, we are going to wait just a couple of minutes before we kick things off. We want to give our fellow colleagues and friends a chance to get logged on and set, and maybe to get their beverages topped off. While you're here, if there are questions during the presentation, we want to hear them. Please enter them into the chat or into the questions box and go to webinar, and we will do our best to answer them right away. Hello again, welcome to everyone just joining us. We're going to wait just a minute or two, not very long. Maybe 2.5 minutes. There's always the chance that we give it that extra second before we kick off, but we're just waiting a moment. Thank you all so much for joining me from your office today, which is in your house, right? Most of you. That's cool. It finally stopped snowing where I'm located yesterday. We had maybe what would be considered the last snowstorm of the season. So I'm looking forward to actual spring beginning at this point, where I know that some of you are like flabbergasted by the idea of snow. All right, we're waiting just another minute or so before we get started. So glad that everyone could join us today. It is wonderful to see you, even though I can't actually see you, but I know you're here and I feel your good vibes. Those are some really great vibes, everybody. Thank you so much. All right, we're gonna wait one more minute, just one more. I might be out of jokes by then. Who am I kidding? I didn't have any jokes to begin with. But we're really glad that everyone's here. We're so grateful for your attendance today and your time, and we hope to share some really cool Confluence automation tricks that improve your work life. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I want to go ahead and again, thank you all so much for being here today to Confluence Content Management, automating your problems away with ScriptRunner for Confluence. All right, let's talk for just a second before we get started with the content of today's presentation. You should be able to hear. We are going to record this session. That is a very common question that we get, and we want to address it right out of the way. We're going to record this session. We're going to make it available to you, and we will include information to get a hold of us after the fact if there are further questions that result. We don't want to leave any stone unturned for you. When you have questions, we're not going to stop the presentation to answer questions, but we will round back to them at the end. We have plenty of time for Q&A today. So if we don't hit your question, we will be following up with you over email and do our best to make sure that you have the tools that you need to go forward. All right, so a little bit about Adaptavist. We are an Atlassian Platinum Solution partner that creates a ton of different apps for Atlassian, Trello, and Slack even. We are also a consulting house where we deal with really complex and big issues for the enterprise, such as scaling Agile and migrating large complex instances of Atlassian and other tools. So that's a little bit about Adaptavist, but that's not what we're here for today. We're here to click a button and go backwards. Your speakers today. So first there's me. I'm your host, Ryan Spilkin. You can find me at the Adaptavist the Adaptavist podcast and such. But the people you really care about are Jill Patterson and Johnny Carter. Jill is the product manager for ScriptRunner for Confluence, and Johnny is an engineering team lead who works on the product as well. These two are a wealth of information, and Jill will actually be giving the presentation, and Jill and Johnny are here to answer your questions after the presentation begins. So I hope I'm not missing anything, but if I am, we'll pick it back up right after the presentation. Thank you all so much. I'm going to turn it over to Jill and the automating your problems away with ScriptRunner for Confluence. I'm also going to turn my webcam off. Thanks, everyone.
Hey everyone, I'm Jill Patterson, the product manager for ScriptRunner for Confluence, and I'm going to start off by talking you through some of the pain points that we often hear about from our customers. Also know that Adaptavist is a customer and we use Confluence on a regular basis, so we really do understand the problems that you're facing every day, especially those that are in large instances. Now, one of the biggest problems that we see is the lack of structure. We all know what happens. You get Confluence in, and people start using it, and it grows organically, sometimes quite big. Lots of spaces, lots of pages, lots of labels, and it can get out of hand. So, this is a nice way, we'll show some ways of reeling it back in and getting structure and organization in place. Another big problem is old content. If content isn't discoverable, then it can become out of date really, really quickly. And you really don't want to have that happen. People are spending time creating content, adding pages. You want this information to be useful and discoverable so that you're not creating the same type of information over and over again. So, looking at that old content is really the key part. So, identifying what that is and then understanding if it needs to be updated or maybe merged with some other information, or just looking at it and saying, nope, this is not relevant anymore. We need to get rid of it. So, keeping on top of that. Merged with some other information, or just looking at it and saying, nope, you also need to make sure that you have the right people with the right access. So they should be able to view and or edit the right pages. And ScriptRunner will be able to help you do some of those restrictions all in one go. So it's really simple. And ScriptRunner will be able to help you do some of those. Another thing is you want to make sure that you're not paying more than you actually need to be.
All right, everyone, we're having a little bit of an echo thing going on. Give us just a second.
And so what you want to do is make sure that your inactive users, people who aren't using Confluence anymore, are actually disabled. That way they're not counting towards your license and you're not paying for those people. A little bit later on, I'll show you an example of a script that can disable users in bulk. So make things a little bit easier. We also know that in large instances, we know admins can be spending a lot of time, especially potentially too much time, doing these regular maintenance tasks. So they need to make sure that they're focused on their jobs and you're not wasting their time on these types of tasks that could pretty easily be automated. So of course, here's where ScriptRunner for Confluence can be your best friend. This is going to be able to get you insight into your content to make decisions on what to do with that content. You're able to do things in bulk, so it speeds up the process of doing some of these actions. And of course, automating them, which allows you even more time because they're set up and they can either be done based on other actions or maybe they're scheduled actions, scheduled automations. And ScriptRunner is mainly an admin tool. Most of the stuff today that we're going to go through, it's an admin setting them up and doing. But even space admins and even users can benefit from this with some of the space admin built-in scripts, and users have macros that they can use. So we'll talk about those as well. So I'm going to take you through some examples of using ScriptRunner for Confluence. And the first one here, we'll start with Jane. So Jane is a new hire. She's a new Confluence administrator. And as a new hire at this particular company, whenever we add a new user to Confluence, that person will have a bio page automatically created for them. And then they can go in and fill out their details and get to know all the other folks who are at the company as well. So let's go have a look and set up this automation. So this is the Meet the Team page, and anytime we add somebody new to Confluence, this is where the bio page will show up. So I'm going to skip over to the administration side. So we are in the ScriptRunner section of the Confluence administration, and I'm in the event listeners section. So we already have this set up, and this is the create bio page for new user. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this so you can see the configurations. So the note here is just the title of what this listener does, and this was shown in that list on the previous page so we can identify what it is. The event that it's looking at is the user create event. So anytime we create a user, this will run. Now the script here, what this is doing is, like I said, when we create a new user, what it's doing is looking at a template that we've already created called bio, and then it's going to put a page in a very specific place, exactly where we want it, for this user. So now that we have that, we had a look at that, we'll go ahead and add Jane as a new user. So go to users and add her here. Now that we've added her, we'll hop back over to Confluence, refresh the page, and then we can see her bio page. Now she can go here and fill it in. Now let's go back to another example. So Jane's going to be taking over content from an old employee named Dave. Now, whether it's intended or not, people tend to look at the author of the pages and go to that person if they have any questions or comments. So in this case, we want to make sure that Jane is the go-to person for all that content now. So what we want to do is change the author of all the pages that Dave was the author of and update that to Jane. So let's go do this. So back at the Meet the Team page, this is one of the pages that Dave had created. So we'll use this as the example to make sure that the script actually does what it's supposed to do. So let's hop over to the administration. So this is the ScriptRunner section of the Confluence Admin. And what we're going to be doing is a very small little script. So we're going to go to the built-in scripts, and this one is called Change Content Author. So this is something that is pretty popular, so it was made into a built-in script so that it can just be run really quickly. Now, first, we're going to find all the information, all the content that Dave had created. And what's really nice about this is that it has a few examples, and so we can put in these little snippets to help us along the way. So the creator here, we're looking for all the content by Dave, and his username is UNCAN, and we want to replace that with Jane's username. All we have to do is hit run, and it lets us know all the pages that have been updated. And just to show you that it worked, let's go back into Confluence and refresh the page. And now you see it's been changed from Dave over to Jane. Since Jane's new, she wants to get an overview of the spaces that she's going to be in charge of. So something she can use to get that overview and get some insight is the space statistics. The space statistics is a built-in script, and this is where it can be found in the ScriptRunner section. So if we search for space statistics, it's right here. And what you can do is choose the spaces that you want to have a look at. And I'll go here and show you an example. So what we're looking at here is a couple of spaces compared against each other, and you can look at multiple spaces, more than two if you'd like. And this gives you an overview of the number of attachments, the number of pages, blogs, labels that are happening that are within each one of these selected spaces. And then at the bottom, there are three additional charts that'll show you some old content. So this will show you the pages, comments, and attachments that are older than 1 year. So we talked a little bit about how old content is a really big problem, and this is just one way to identify what that old content is so you can go and have a look in particular spaces. So in this example, we are comparing, again, two different spaces. You could use this if you're interested in looking for something very specific or just looking for something out of the ordinary. Now, something that I see immediately is the space in red. We have a lot of pages, but very few labels. I think this could be a good start to see if adding more labels, putting more labels into place could help organize that space better. So when people use the term use more labels, that can be a little vague. It doesn't mean that just by adding more labels, it's going to organize your content. You want to be thoughtful in how you use labels, which labels you use, how you make them more easily accessible to people who may not know which labels to actually use or what they're even used for. Maybe they're not familiar with certain macros that can be placed on other pages to pull that type of content. With that all in mind, it brings us to our next example. So Jane just looked at some space statistics, and she probably has some ideas on how she can go in and reorganize some things and tackle some of the spaces that she's in charge of. But in order to take immediate action, so what she wants to do is from this point forward, make sure that all the users are putting the proper labels on to all the pages. And so she has an idea of how she'd like to use some of those labels. What she's done is create a template where she gives the user choices of labels because they may not know how to spell the right label, they may not know to even add a label. So let's go over and I'll show you how this is set up. So here we have a page where we have different notes for different teams or different projects. And so they're organized with a macro based on the label that's associated with them. So what Jane did is she created this page, but she also created a template that is used here. So what happens is the user will click on this to create a new project notes page. And let's say there's a weekly dev call and they say, okay. And here is where we have the different labels. So these are the three project names. And so let's say that the user decided that they were going to create this weekly dev call meeting notes page, and it is associated with this particular project. Once they add that label, they can go ahead, edit the page, fill it all in. And what will happen is because of the macro, let's just refresh the page. And now you'll see that weekly dev call um, is in this list. And this is just, like I said, a macro that shows the different pages based on that label. So now the user won't have to try to remember that the label's there. It's prompted first thing in line for them, and it gives them a choice of which project they're working on. So it's a no-brainer, just pick one and boom, it's there. Obviously, this can be shown in other places based on the label, but it's something that Jane can put into place right here, right now, and moving forward, all of this information, all of this content will start to have labels. Also, I should mention, don't be afraid to start with a label and then change it or decide that you need to break it out into two separate ones. In ScriptRunner, there are built-in scripts where you can add new labels to pages in bulk, to rename labels, delete labels, all of that kind of thing. So if you decide later on that you want to change the name of that, no worries, that can be done all in bulk real fast. So if you want to take a look at the template that was created, that Jane had created, I have this open, and the project notes template is the one that we're using. And all this is a macro. So this is a ScriptRunner macro called choose label. And here is where we add the labels that we want the users to input. So instead of someone having to remember the name project-sandcastle, this is already set up for them. And there you go. With old content, it's not always clear if that content is still relevant or not. So what Jane wants to do is set up an automation as a reminder to review and keep on top of the pages that are important to her. So let's go over to ScriptRunner, and under jobs, what we're going to do is set up this monthly review of old content. Now, what a job is, essentially, it's a small script, just like some of them that we looked at before, and this is run on a regular basis. So we are going to set up a schedule to have this run every month so that we can understand the content that has become old. So here's what this job looks like. And so we decide how often we want to be notified of this. So this will be in an email. And we've decided in this case that we want to get notified every month. So we put that expression in here. And we don't necessarily have to look at content in the entire instance. We're looking at content that we care about. And in Jane's case, she just wants to look at these two spaces. So put in the CQL there to only look at those spaces, and then we assign a group to be notified. So this could have as many or as few people. You tend to have maybe like one or two admins in this group, and then the big key part here is the what does old mean. So in someone's case, at a different company, they might say that content that is older than 2 years is something that I care about and something that I want to review. Otherwise, in this case, Jane wants to look at things that are older than just 3 months. So we've set this up, and when that is run, an email goes out, and the email just has a list of the pages that are out of date. When we talk about out of date, I should mention that that just means how long things have been since they've been modified. So you do need a human to kind of go in there and decide, is this relevant? Is this not relevant? Because sometimes, information that's been around for a long time is still completely relevant. So it's better to have a review of that before just automatically getting rid of information. The last thing I want to show you is something I mentioned at the very beginning, how to deactivate multiple users at once. Now you don't want these inactive users counting towards your license tier because then you're paying for people who aren't using Confluence, and that's just totally not necessary. So let's have a look at the script. So in the Confluence Admin, in the ScriptRunner section under Console, this is where you can add any script that you'd like. So the one that we've added here, what this does is it takes any users, I can list them here with just a comma in between, and what this script will do is it's going to take those users out of the Confluence users group, put them into another one called deactivated users, and then actually disable them. So then in that case, they won't be counting towards the license. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this. And now we can go to the users and look at these two folks to make sure they've been deactivated. And here you can see both Dave and James are disabled. We can also double check just to make sure that they are not in the Confluence admins group, or sorry, Confluence users group, but they are now added to the deactivated users group. And there you have it. And these are just a few examples of what ScriptRunner can do to help organize and automate important tasks really quickly. I wish we had time for more. There's so much more that ScriptRunner can do, but thank you so much for listening, and I'm going to turn it back to Ryan and we'll do some Q&A.
All right, here we go with the Q&A bit. So good to have everyone still with us. Thank you for your, no, don't show that. You know, sometimes you got to do this whole screen share thing, and then you got to figure out how to do the screen share thing. You know, it's just one of those things with the stuff. I'm not gonna share any screen right now. I'm just gonna stop that entirely. So we've got some cool, so first of all, thank you, Jill, so much for that informative demonstration. And thank you so much for being here. And Johnny, thank you. Can you two say hi?
Hi, guys. Thank you, Ryan.
You got it, no
Hey.
problem. And here, let's see if I've got it figured out. Show main screen. Okay, do you see it now? Does everybody see question time? No?
Yes,
No?
yes.
Now you
We just
see,
did.
yeah, and then you saw my
There you
desktop, which I'm sure was really useful. A lot
Boring.
of great information there. All right, so let's begin. I'm gonna pull up some questions and we are going to go over them one at a time. I've got some on some slides. And the first one, oh my goodness. I'm just gonna stop showing my screen. Let's do it this way. Ready? Here we go. All right. From Jun Lee. Now, please, if I mispronounce anyone's last name, please forgive me. I would never want to do that on purpose. But from Jun Lee, we use Crowd to manage users. Would ScriptRunner detect new users coming in from Crowd?
So I can speak to that. Yeah, it is possible to set up event listeners on the crowd events. So the short version is yes. Important things to be aware of, depending on your directory setup. There are different and similar sounding events that come from the crowd API that you'll definitely want to like test those out and prove that they do the things you intend for them to do. But the short version is, yeah, ScriptRunner can absolutely detect new users that are coming from crowd and react to them.
Nice, thank you, Johnny. All right. Just when you think you can change to the next slide. Fooled you. From Catherine Paderaki. When you change the author, does the audit log or page history still show the initial author?
Yeah, the Confluence audit log will.
Yes.
And I believe there will additionally be audit logging events for the change because we're routing all that through the Confluence API itself, which handles the audit logging.
Nice. All right. From Martin. Martin sent us two great questions, actually. First, Martin asks, Martin Steglich, how to address scripts or automated tasks which will run longer than 60 seconds. Just asking because they'll be killed. Now, he did have a little smiley face after that, but I didn't put it on the slide. Sorry, Martin. How do we address it?
Yeah, so I think what Martin may be referring to, and this is a confusing fact about ScriptRunner, it's one of the longest standing open bug reports, I think. And it's true of every ScriptRunner for Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, is if you open up a built-in script, you click run, and it's doing a large bulk operation that takes more than 60 seconds to complete, the browser will say timeout. But in fact, the job is still running in the background and will complete, we promise.
Well, hold on now,
so,
Johnny.
He's sneaky.
Promise is doing a lot of work there.
Yeah. Promises. But the short version is they won't actually be killed in the background. It'll continue to run. If you have these kind of like long running scripts that you're either running through the script console or through the built-in scripts page, one really useful thing to do, it can actually be to do them as scheduled script jobs that run every week, every month, or so on. One thing that I know is really near and dear to Jill's heart and my heart is to make sure there's more parity between the list of things you can do in built-in scripts and the list of things you can do in script jobs and vice versa, so that anything you could do as a built-in that's a one-time thing, you can also do as a job. That's a work in progress, but it's something we're really keen to do, because it's one way to address this problem is instead of having to go in, manually click in the UI and wait and hope, because it might time out, it could just run, scheduled jobs will just run in the background. You don't have to worry about them, but you will get an execution report after they're done. So great question. I'll try to see if I can find the link to the bug report and link to that in the chat.
Great, and keep those questions coming, folks. We sure do appreciate them. Our next question comes from from Andrew Mann. Andrew asks, the script for deactivating users in bulk you showed, where can I see it? Great question, Andrew.
We can send you a link to the library, and it will be updated on the library coming soon.
Yeah, if you don't know about Adaptavist script library and you're using our tools, we cannot tell you enough. The library is a free resource that we provide with scripts that might be with scripts that are already written to handle some business cases that you might already be having. So Andra, who is our moderator in the background today, would you be so kind as to provide everyone a link to the library? Thank you, Andra. I'm going to trust that she gets that done. All right, Martin Steglich with another great question. Oh, Johnny, were you?
I just wanted to issue a retraction. That long-standing bug was actually fixed a few months ago. This is the problem of having institutional knowledge as it goes out of date. So built-in scripts in recent version of ScriptRunner won't time out. They'll continue to run in the browser basically until they complete. So now you might want to go get a cup of coffee and just close the browser tab, but the job will continue to run in the background. So.
I certainly could always advocate for another cup of coffee. All right, another great question from Martin Steglich. Is there a way to find and remove unused attachments not embedded on page or linked? This is a great question.
So we do have a script where you can remove old attachments, and you determine what old means. So it'll look for attachments that have existed older than 2 years or something like that. But if you aren't really sure if something is old, like I was mentioning before, and it's still valid, you could look for, this isn't quite what's being asked here, but you could like put a label or identify what those pages are, where those attachments are located. But even if they're not embedded onto the page, like if they were there and you don't see them there, but if you go to attachments and they are listed there, they'll still recognize those. They'll still find those. I think that answers. Do you have more, Johnny?
Yeah, I think perhaps there are cases where like either I think the use case being described is there are attachments that are attached to the page, but they're not mentioned anywhere in the page. And so what I think they're wanting to do is based on the page content that you would need to write a custom script for, but it is possible by interrogating the storage content. It's actually probably secretly a really good feature request that we could either build or add as a documented example to the script library.
Cool.
So I don't know, Jill, should we send them to the support portal?
Yes, please. Yeah, we want to hear anything that you guys are looking for, needing. All feature requests are welcomed. And maybe Andra can put in the support link so that people can add new feature requests there. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a bug. We're always looking at new features there. Because the more people who request things, the better. The more I will have ammo to raise them to the top.
Yeah, and we are really enthusiastic about hearing what you need, because ultimately we care more about what you need than what we want to build, right? We want to hear it. So let us know. All right. I mean, we like our stuff. Don't get me wrong. All right. Anja asks, in the space, and I'm sorry I don't have your last name, Anja. Pardon me. In the space stats, is it possible to see how often a page is viewed, or to see stats on search terms and how often they appear in a user looking at a page? They resulted in a user looking at a page, sorry.
At the moment, no, I don't believe we have any of those, but that is higher up on my list, or our list, my list, the ScriptRunner for Confluence list, to add additional features to the space statistics, because it is a very, very popular built-in script and a lot of people are using it. So if there are specifics like this, please let us know. So this is a fantastic feature request.
Yeah, I think especially the first part on page views. For the second one, things like going from the search page to a particular page, you might want to look at like an analytics system like Google Analytics or something similar, because then you're talking about tracking user journeys. Those are kind of already solved problems. You may want to look at other things for that.
All right.
And I believe, oh, sorry, just to add a little bit more. I believe Confluence is adding their own statistics. And so we don't want to overlap with what they're putting in. So we're keeping a close eye as that happens so that we're not overlapping.
Cool. All right. Do not show my Slack. All right. From Mina Ryan, is there a way to delete trash older than a certain amount of time versus bulk delete trash?
Out of the box, there is not a built-in script to do that. Right now, just like you said here, it is just bulk delete trash from any space that you choose that you have access to. But again, a good feature request. I don't know if this is something that you could do manually.
I was going to say, Jill, do we just want to add this to the age picker epic? Not to talk shop in front of everybody, but
too late.
He loves to add scope. Loves it.
Engineers, right? All right. Another question from Chris is, with your first example using a listener, where can I find a list of available API calls that Confluence offers?
Yeah, so Atlassian maintained the Confluence Java doc. So I would say that's the best place to look for it. Now, it's worth pointing out the script console already has the means to, or any field where you're editing code has the means to take you directly to the Confluence Java doc with a keyboard shortcut. And this is described, we actually document this. If you look at the ScriptRunner docs, the page on the code editor will tell you how to do smart completions. And one of those, smart completions and Javadoc lookup. So if you're in a script and your cursor is on a particular Atlassian API, like say the page manager, and you hit Control-J, a new tab should open up and take you to the Atlassian Javadoc for that API. So you don't even have to head out to Google. I'll post the link to the documentation on that to the panelists, and hopefully Andre can share that with y'all. But yeah, the short version is if you just want to know, for instance, what are the things I can do with a page, and you want to explore the API a bit, find out what's possible beyond a documented example, a great way to start is to paste that documented example into the script console, click on particular APIs, just hit Control-J. That'll take you to the documentation for that class, and you can explore the API from there.
Cool. All right. From Tanya. Hi, Tanya. Thanks for joining us. I'm interested in adding a bit of content to a space when each space is created. Can be done.
Yeah, I think that would be done with a listener. So you would just listen for the space creation. Though there may be another side to this depending on who's doing the space creation. So if you want to respond to anytime anybody creates a space, that's one thing. But we do also have a copy space built in script, where if you, one use case we see from people is they have a template space, and then they just copy that out when they get requests to create a new space. Jill may have more to say on that.
Nope, that sounds about right. And that content could vary based on a template.
Okay. Speaking of templates, Anja has another question. Is it possible to use ScriptRunner to say, when I export this page to PDF, I want this header and this logo to appear? Ah, interesting.
Out of the box, we don't have that yet, but I know that there are, like we have extensions on Confluence right now where you can export a bunch of things like that, like for proposals and things like that. Trying to think where ScriptRunner would be more helpful for that.
You know, it occurs to me, Jill, do we have some document examples for scripting with other plugins? I may actually be thinking of the Jira side, but I do know there are a lot of plugins in the Atlassian space around PDFs. And one big thing that ScriptRunner often does is we interact with those other plugins. So if you wanted to do something like, say, bulk export a space to PDF and use this other plugin's functionality to add a header, that might be possible. Because it's a great question.
Yeah, I don't want to use. I mean, this is not an Adaptavist product, but one of our friends in the marketplace, K15T, offers a very successful plugin called Scroll Office, and Scroll Office is the one that we typically recommend when people are looking to do these functions. If anyone from K15T is on the call, you're welcome. We love you. A lot of love for K15T. All right. Yeah. This question is near and dear to my heart. Right? Is it possible to remove old attachment versions using ScriptRunner?
This is on our backlog.
And it has been for a while.
Yeah, sorry.
It's challenging. There are reasons for that.
It is possible to remove page versions right now. And there's some configurations about that, so you can leave a few in between, or you can get rid of pretty much all of them on a regular basis. So that one's a job called Prune Old Page Versions. And so just like Johnny had mentioned, we're looking to make the built-in scripts and the jobs, so like our one-offs and scheduled events happen together, or we want to add that kind of functionality. So this very close cousin to the other one there, and it is on our backlog. It is something we considered, and let us know if there's others who would also benefit from this. Then I don't want to say coming soon, but it's coming. I can't give you a date. I can never give you a date.
He's on the webinar. There are others who want this, Jill. I told you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for letting me know.
Link to that issue.
Yes.
Maybe we can share that out. So if you really want it, come vote for it.
Yeah. Come on. Go vote for it. Let the people's voice be heard. All right. Chris needs to edit the basic script to create a Jira task with conditions, like create the task only when approved by through a Kamala workflow, another add-on from a specific space. So do we have enough there to answer that question?
Yeah, actually, I believe that we have an example very close to this documented in the script library. Am I wrong, Jill?
Johnny, no.
I know we do have something similar relating to the Kamala workflows. but I would have to look at it.
We do have examples in the documentation on how to create an event listener in Confluence that creates Jira issues in a linked Jira instance. So we absolutely have that in the documentation. We also do have integration with Kamala workflows, so that if you have Kamala workflows installed and ScriptRunner installed and you go to create an event listener, you'll see Kamala events there in the list of events that you can respond to. So between those two things, you should be able to write this custom listener. Now, whether we have the code that you could just copy and paste for your precise exact use case, you might have to do a little tweaking, but the building blocks are there.
Nice. All right. Megan asks, is it possible to expand the built-in scripts to include a check on space or page permissions for a specific user? Oh, I think you broke them, Megan. Might have broke them. It's okay.
I'm curious if Megan's on the call, and I'd like to hear a little more about what exactly she wants. So like a check on space permissions for a specific user is the idea for a given script, you want to check before doing an operation if so-and-so has access to the space. I kind of want to know more, I guess. Like I want to know a deeper version of this question.
Okay, so we are having some issues getting some questions in. If we are by chance, if we miss your question or if we don't answer it quite sufficiently, like this one, Megan, please respond to the email that comes to you after the webinar and we will round back with you. All right, so I don't want to, your question is important to your question is important to us and we will respond to it, but because of the situation that the technical back end, and this is our fault, but we'll have to follow up with you on email about that, but we will do it. All right, moving on. Well, that was graceful. Mina asks, when you run the jobs, do you set up an admin account versus a named user who is an admin to run the jobs? Tobor, take it away.
Yeah, I think there's some variance, but yeah, I mean that's a good practice when you're setting up scheduled jobs, is you run them as a particular service account. Some people with like very large instances may even create different service accounts to segment their jobs. So yeah, that is, I believe, possible. And it is like with the CQL escalation job, I believe you can specify a user for the operation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's a great one from Aaron. Ron. Hold on 2 seconds, getting it all formatted so that we can see it in a reasonable manner. All right, Aaron asks, how can you automate creating a set of pages based on a trigger from Jira? Great question.
So what you're looking for there is a remote event listener. So yeah, if you look in the ScriptRunner docs, there's a section where you can actually listen to events from linked Atlassian instances. So if you've got a linked Bitbucket system, you can listen to Bitbucket events. If you've got a linked Jira system, you can listen to Jira events, respond to them with an event listener in Confluence. And you can actually go the other way. So you could, if you had ScriptRunner for Jira, you could listen to the trigger event in Jira and create pages in the remote Confluence.
Cool. This question from Michael Schultz is very similar to one that was asked earlier. We're running into a lot of low Confluence space errors. Is there a way to identify outdated attachments and remove them if not linked on the page anymore? Yeah,
I think this is an echo of a question from earlier. And the short version is this should be a feature request. But yeah, I'm sensing a theme. We've got 2 votes for this feature, Jill, already.
I know.
Like, seriously, guys, I told you. Not that my opinion matters.
hit up the support portal, log a feature request. We'll get you a link to the right ticket, and that actually really helps us gauge how much interest there is in the ticket. Is not just votes, but number of linked requests. That's a maybe telling too much about our internal process there on the call, but it's a
Well,
good
a
way
little
to
bit of
put your
inside baseball
thumb
there,
on the
Mr.
scale.
Carter. Yeah, we want to hear it from you, please. So if you want to remove old attachments, please visit our support portal and put in a ticket. We will count your voice. All right. A similar question, but not quite the same. Can I query for content that has not been viewed or looked at for, let's say, 12 weeks? From Nadia.
Yes, yes, absolutely. This is what I showed with that job, the old content notifier. So this will send you an email of the pages that have not been, oh, sorry, I totally read that wrong. It says viewed or looked at, because we are going by modified date. Can you tweak this? Can you write this custom?
So I think the answer here would be a custom CQL function, or maybe a search extractor. Both of those things let you add metadata about pages that you could use in a CQL query, which a lot of our scripts run on a CQL query. Since you're looking to query, I would look at CQL functions and search extractors. The number of page views is available through the Confluence API. Again, this would be a great thing for us to have as a documented example, but the short version is you would want to create a CQL function or a search extractor that got the number of page views, and then you could query on that using CQL.
All right, Jill, did you have something you wanted to share your screen for? I've been preparing questions, so I haven't been keeping an eye on our back channel chat.
Only if a question arises where I need to show anything. I was just making sure technically we were okay.
Because we are kind of through the questions at the moment. So let me get let me make sure that we're good. Now, go ahead.
I mean, I could show some things. I'm happy to show more. There's plenty in my head that I'd like to show if we have time.
I will say that we do have a request from one of our audience members to add more Confluence specific scripts to library.adaptavist.com.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's give them what they're looking for.
Absolutely. We want that too.
And when we add scripts to the library, they go through a robust and thorough testing process. So it does take us some time to get those done because, hey, we don't want to give you something that's going to make your life harder, right? Right? That's what we do. We don't want to make your life harder. We want to make it better. So yeah, please let us know. We're happy to add more as we can. All right. So with that being said, I believe that all that's left to do at this point is say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Jill and Andra, for being on the background. We really appreciate it. If we did not handle your question, if we did not get to your question today on the call, sorry, and we will get back to you. There's no way we're going to leave you hanging, okay? So look for an email from us shortly with a link to the recording of this webinar and reply to that email if you have questions. We will be monitoring that and responding to you as soon as we can. So for Johnny Carter and Jill Patterson and Andra Dinu, and all of us here at Adaptavist, thank you for joining us on today's webinar, and we'll see you next time. Connect with us on social at Adaptavist and listen to our podcast if you want, or don't. That's fine too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.